Just before I get on to the main topic, I'm seeing something circulating at the moment which you don't know where it's coming from. You don't know really where any of these things are coming from. But it's talking about suing small to medium-sized businesses here in Ireland for discrimination in relation to disability laws because certain shops didn't allow people to go around without a mask. That is an abuse. That is an attack upon small to medium-sized shopkeepers and business owners. Always remember they have the right to refuse you admission, and they actually have the right to refuse you sale. They don't want to. They want your custom. They want your money. Recently, I contacted a shop in Kilkenny and I just asked them for their version of events based upon what had been in mainstream media and social media about them. They said they were not allowing non-maskers to enter the shop, but they'd serve them out the door or they'd serve them by phone. That's reasonable. This is an abuse. This is people who seem to think that if you litigate, you'll make a big pile of money out of getting settlements from that. Don't listen to those kind of people. Don't listen to anybody who's inciting that or who's promoting that. That's not how it works. The shops are legally watertight. Your claim to an exemption from wearing a mask is under the reasonable excuse in the statutory instrument. It's not a disability. So if you say that you have a reasonable excuse for wearing a mask, you're legally watertight up to that point. But the notion that you're then claiming to be disabled is a separate matter. The statutory instrument says that anybody who has a diagnosed disability automatically has an exemption, so they can automatically claim their exemption from wearing a mask if they have already been diagnosed as disabled. They use a special sticker on their car. They're entitled to park in designated parking areas and so on. But I'm not, by the grace of God. I don't want to be. Nobody. There'd be very, very few people out there, a handful, who would be claiming to be disabled when they're not. You don't want to be disabled. Nobody in their right mind wants to be disabled. So the notion that people are pretending to be disabled just so they don't have to wear masks is rubbish. You don't have to claim a disability to not wear a mask. But at the same time then to be saying, in all these ones like D-Wall, going on talking about disability discrimination, all the rest of it, they're talking rubbish. They're using big words that they don't know the meaning of. They're inciting people to get themselves into trouble, and they're going to cause damage to lots of people, including small to medium-sized shop owners, with abusive and vexatious litigation, which is just going to fail. So don't be listening to this carry on about I can sue for discrimination because they wouldn't let me into Spar in Mullinavogue in County Tipperary because I wasn't wearing a mask. That's not going to work. You're wasting your time. Just do what I do. Just say I'm not going to wear a mask. You want to serve me out the door? That's cool. I've never had any trouble. I'm digressing, but I just wanted to get that in because I'm seeing a lot of that flotsam and jetsam flying around social media at the moment. But the big issue is Texas. I digressed for the first 2 to 3 minutes there. The big issue is Texas. Until quite recently, I would never have seen the possibility of Texas seriously considering themselves becoming an independent country again, which they were for about 7 years before they joined the US. Texas was an independent country. If it were an independent country today, Texas would be possibly one of the wealthiest in the world, if it was properly governed. Same with Ireland, but we'll come on to that. Texas has huge reserves of oil and huge reserves of gas. In terms of hard energy, Texas should be an international importer, let alone the mainland United States or North America. Instead, very many people at the moment in Texas are dying and have died. Now, the mainstream media won't say this, but they're dying and have died. And that is because Texas fell for the fallacy of green energy. Green energy is, from the start to the finish, a fallacy. Anybody who knows the first and second laws of thermodynamics, which I believe should be taught to every child at the start of 6th class in primary school, anybody who knows those knows that you cannot invent energy out of thin air. You have the creation of energy to create electricity or petrol or diesel comes at a cost. Now, That doesn't mean that we should be wasteful with energy. There's some oil rig in Nigeria that has had a flame of gas coming out of it for 65 years. That's a disgrace. That gas should be harnessed. So there's a difference between clean energy and efficient energy. Or, sorry, green energy, I should say, and efficient and clean energy. In the old days, when they would drill for oil, they would allow the gas just to burn up into the atmosphere. They're still doing that in Nigeria, but you know, hey. In any event, Texas, the state of Texas and the people of Texas have been huge victims of the fallacy of green energy. They're paying a very high price for that at the moment. And they are blameless. The people who are freezing to death, who are starving in Texas at the moment. Texas has been reduced to little more than a third world country at the moment. One of the wealthiest states in the United States is now falling apart infrastructurally and socially because of the fallacy, the evil fallacy of green energy. Many years ago, when I was a teenager, about 16 or thereabouts, I remember talking to a local woman. She's still alive, she doesn't live here now. A nice woman. She was very heavily involved in the Catholic Church. She was a devout Roman Catholic. She was very opposed to freedom of choice. But that was coming from a considered position of conscience on her part. The woman is devoutly religious. That gives her a great degree of substance. Okay, I'm not a Roman Catholic. Okay, I'm not a Christian. But one of the tenets of paganism, and you see it in the film The Wicker Man, Lord Summerisle says, we treat Christianity as a comparative religion. Well, that's fair enough. That's tolerant. A golden rule of paganism is that you are tolerant of other religious beliefs. So I'm tolerant of that woman. I was tolerant then, I'm tolerant now. But furthermore, her genuine devotion and her genuine commitment to Roman Catholicism, I'd imagine now she's probably not very happy with the Roman Catholic Church when I think about it, because they've gone woke and she wouldn't have. That gives a woman substance, and it gives her an independent and objective moral code, separate from what RTE might tell her. Good enough. That's good enough. I remember when I was about 16, mentioning the Green Party to this woman, and she grew horns practically in front of me when I said the Green Party. She said, they're evil people and they're communists. She said, green on the outside, red on the inside. I'd love to meet her now and shake her hand. I'd love to meet that woman now and shake her hand. And I would. I would say to her, you were right 25 years ago about the Green Party. What Ireland has similar to Texas is that we have vast reserves of natural gas. Natural gas is the bedfellow of something else. It is the bedfellow of oil. You can bet your bloody life that there's oil off the coast of Ireland somewhere, or maybe under Ireland. What we have learned from Texas is that we have got to stop messing around with green energy and all of this nonsense. And countries that have natural resources like oil, like coal, like gas, we need to start using them and making money for ourselves with them. Ireland has two other resources as well. We have fish and we have fresh water. There are many countries in the world who have to import fresh water. We should be exporting it to them. We have an abundance of fish in Ireland. We should be exporting that. That doesn't mean that we secede from the European Union. It doesn't mean that Texas secedes from the United States of America. It means that Texas and Ireland set their own agenda. If you take Norway, Norway is oil rich. And they invested that properly and they made sure their people got a dividend from that. Instead, in Ireland, we allowed these fifth-rate venal insect politicians to steal the dividend from our resources of oil, mainly off Ballinaboy in County Mayo. I'm not opposed to them building a gas terminal there. I'm opposed to the dividend being stolen by the usual group of insiders. That's what I'm opposed to. I'm not a Green. For many reasons, I'm not a Green. There's also, as we're seeing as well, and I've linked in the description below, a terrific video from Thomas Sheridan about the occult history of the Green Party. He's on the mark with that one. I actually think, to be honest with you, it's his best video. I think it's his best video. He's done a lot of great material, of course. He's done a lot of other stuff. But his expose of the Green Party, that's heavy going. That's a goodie, his expose of the Green Party, and it's linked in the description below. What we have seen in Texas now is that the Green Party, the Green Agenda, Big Green, Global Green, Corporate Green, Greta Thunberg, all of her supporters need to be put in the refuse can today. These people are evil. These people have propagated an agenda which has caused death and destruction in Texas. What has happened in Texas today could be very credibly happening to Ireland tomorrow. We need to demolish the wind turbines. They need to be ground up and thrown into landfill or used as ballast for new building. The Green Party are psychotic. They are everything wrong with Fine Gael and the Democrats on steroids. They are woke. They are after our children. Yes, I don't have children, but they are after our children. And if you think I'm tinfoil hat in that one, take a look at 9 questions that are everybody's RTE's favourite social justice warrior, Roderick O'Gorman, is still refusing to answer, and me having asked them to him in June of last year. Precisely about who he promotes and who he knocks around with. We need to see the Green Party as evil. I wasn't as clear about that in my thoughts as I was until the past 48 hours, and I've seen what the Green Agenda has done to Texas. Texas, as I've said already, should be exporting energy to the rest of the world. So should we. And instead, we're going down this Luddite road of building these ridiculous wind turbines, which are actually energy net. They use more energy than they create. Don't forget the first and second laws of thermodynamics. Don't forget those. Look it up. If you understand the first and second laws of thermodynamics, you understand everything about how humanity works, how existence works. They're not just principles of science. They're principles of existence, the first and second laws of thermodynamics. If you can get your head around the first and second laws of thermodynamics, everybody should be taught those, because if you do, it totally opens your eyes to about how the whole world works. So, for example, the United States Congress has created a bar on people seeking patents for perpetual energy or perpetual motion inventions. It got to the point where people were coming looking for patents for what they would claim would be devices that would be completely self-perpetuating. There is no such thing as self-perpetuating energy. You put in, get the energy, there's waste left at the end. Whether it's burning coal, or whether it's burning petrol, or diesel, or whatever. The way energy works is you cannot magic energy up out of thin air. If people understand the first and second laws of thermodynamics, they will understand that. They will understand it the way that people understand, that 1 and 1 equals 2. But this gets on to 1984. The party wanted people to say that 2 and 2 equaled 5. Well, the Green Party wants people to say that the first and second laws of thermodynamics don't apply. But the US Congress, actually, back in the days before wokeness completely turned into a cancer in the United States, they put in place, and it's still there, a patent against anybody applying for perpetual motion energy. That's still there, believe it or not. They won't tell you about that. Texas is the game changer. Game changer is a word that the likes of Luke O'Neill and all his pals in RTE use. But Texas is the game changer because that's a first world country and they're not stupid people in Texas. Texas is a very advanced society in so many regards. The mainstream media, RTE, all the greenies and Ranelagh, they'll tell you that Texas is a backward southern state of the US. Far from it. Texas is a highly advanced society. Okay, they use the death penalty, which I disagree with. I abhor the death penalty. But in so many other regards, Texas is very much a 21st century society. And the people are not stupid, and they're not backward, and they're not rednecks in Texas. They're not going to tolerate what's being done to them. I can tell you that. Loved ones have died. People have watched their loved ones freeze to death or starve to death in Texas over the past 3 to so days. That is the game changer. That is a game changer, what has happened in Texas. They're not going to have this. The Texans aren't like that anyway. They're probably the most fiercely independent-minded state in the US. They're not going to have that. What has happened to Texas has been... It is comparable to a war crime, what has been done to Texas. It is comparable to a war crime. It is an atrocity, what has been inflicted on those people in Texas. It is an atrocity. And all because we listened to, a half-wit Swede and Al Gore. Well, now, they now need to be put, as I said, in the bin today. They need not just to be ignored and the green agenda scrapped. As I said, the wind turbines broken up tomorrow. Not just that. They need to be put on trial, or at least in some way exposed for the lies that they have perpetuated for too long. The first and second laws of thermodynamics, whatever Greta Thunberg says, or whatever the blue-haired brigade in Ranelagh say, you cannot deny the first and second laws of thermodynamics. Texas is a game changer, and it's global. We now need to be looking at the nature of real energy, in other words, gas, coal, oil. That's a real energy. Gas and oil, really, and coal. Trump was. Oh, by the way, that pipeline that Trump was putting in place, that Biden has now decided to rescind. They're going to have a job now. They're going to have a job defending that one. It's one thing when people lose jobs. And that's what Biden was in favour of. The Democrats are very much in there with global green. It's one thing when people lose jobs. It's another thing when they lose their loved ones. That's another quantity altogether. What's happening in Texas isn't about people losing jobs. That's much bigger than that. Oh yeah, there's going to be a lot. There's going to be serious economic ruin in Texas for many of the people there. But the Democrats and the green agenda, from what I can see happening in Texas, are now washed up. We need to accept that and stop denying it. They are washed up. We need to get the Greens out of Ireland. We need to get them out of office. We need to get them out of our county councils and stop infesting the Dáil, the Seanad, the county councils, RTE, the Irish Times, with all of their filth. We need to get these filth out. Now, in relation to mainstream media, Thomas was talking about Dharma and how I had decided in 2020, I'm kind of rehashing an old thing here, I had decided not to run for election for the rest of my life. Yeah, absolutely. But that wasn't just a churlish decision on my part. That was a considered decision on my part. The kind of people who would allow 35 Fine Gaelers and 18 Greens into the Dáil in February of 2020 are never going to vote for me. Concomitantly, I am not going to compromise. So if we're going to get 35 Fine Gaelers back into the Dáil and 18 Greens into the Dáil, then I'm not running for election. Simple. People have said, oh, you're highly articulate and you're intelligent and you know the system. Probably I'm too much. Look at Simon Harris. Simon played a blinder. This is what they're saying. Simon played a blinder. Simon played a blinder. Oh, Leo wore a coat. Leo's a ledge. Oh, yeah, Leo's a ledge. Look, did you see Leo? And Simon put on the big specs. These two half-witted clowns playing fancy dress during the pandemic. Half-witted clowns. Varadkar going behind the phones in some hospital. And I'm sorry, but the problem is that they have enablers. You cannot blame pigs for grunting, but you can blame people who let them into the living room. That's the problem. An event happened, I suspect, that I mentioned in a previous video. I won't rehash that again because it appears to be contentious. Which could provide, quite separate from the issue of coronavirus, which in my opinion is total hoax. But quite separate from that, there is a strong justification, if what I think is right, for the lockdown, particularly in the Southern Hemisphere. I won't go into why now, but there was a situation that potentially arose in the past 7 days that made the notion of a global lockdown defensible. But those who decided that view the likes of Simon Harris and Micheál Martin and Leo Varadkar, they view them, if they view them at all, if they come onto the radar at all, or Biden or Harris, Kamala Harris, I mean, not Simon Harris, and Johnson, they view them as collateral. I mean that seriously. There are many, many things I have not said on social media. I've been in the High Court since 2011. I see how the system works. I see how people work in there. Thomas a while ago made a statement. He said, karma doesn't exist. He said, it is bought and sold like a commodity. I largely, not fully, but largely agree with that. If you see how the High Court works in Dublin, then you see, yes, indeed, karma is bought and sold. Certainly in the High Court it is, absolutely. Absolutely. That's where it all happens, is in the High Court. You know, forget about the politicians. They're not going to go to the High Court for you. You know, they don't have the competence and they don't have the money. Because they're on a civil servant's wage, those politicians. Oh, we hear all the huge salaries the politicians get and all these ones in RTE. That's not real capital. That's a wage they get. That can be pulled from them. You can switch off the gas there when you want to. So don't take those ones seriously. Don't take them seriously, the politicians. I don't. You know, they are just play actors. Had Micheál Martin had one scintilla of sense when he saw the lockdown coming round, and then when he didn't manage to get enough seats in the Dáil with Fianna Fáil, because people don't like him all that much. They don't like this wishy-washy, pencil-necked little man with his face smile. Sorry, Micheál, they don't like you that much. They probably dislike Varadkar more. Yeah, Varadkar is positively dislikable. Yes, I'll accept that. But sorry, Mr. Martin, they don't dig you that much. When he didn't get more than, I think he got about 38 seats, he should have chucked it in and said, right, I'm going back to being a backbencher. I didn't manage to get enough seats. Let's have another general election. Let's get somebody else in to do a better job than me. Because had he done that, he might have left himself open to become leader of Fianna Fáil at some point in the future. That would have been leadership. Also, with the year that we've had in it since then, he would have been exiting the game and wouldn't have been collateral in all of this. Always watch out to not be collateral. Thomas, again, you must think I'm one of Thomas's biggest stands here, but he just comes out with so much good stuff, particularly with cinema. Thomas mentioned The Wicker Man. Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah, don't be collateral. Oh, no. Oh, no, don't be collateral. I can actually smell my breath bouncing off the microphone at the moment. Ugh. I know what they meant. Don't be collateral. Look at The Wicker Man. Just look at The Wicker Man and how he made himself into collateral. And all the signs were there in front of him. And all those people on that island did their best to help him get out of the situation he was in. He was warned. He had his warning. And he didn't take it. Micheál Martin had his warning and he didn't take it. Now, as I said, I believe that the lockdown is coming from a far different narrative from the one that the mainstream media is allowed to say. And I also believe that there is serious justification for a media blackout on what really happened. I think. You never know. You never know. But I'm putting two and two together about the blackdown and the lockdown and what happened over the past 7 days. You know, look it up somewhere else. I'm not going to say it here. Look it up somewhere else. And it would, in relation to dealing with normies and how they panic and how they turn into sheep and how, you know, the insanity of the masses kicks in. The people who made the decisions weren't altruistic, but they were pragmatic, and they were saying, you know, we're dealing here with normies and we have to make sure that there isn't global rioting and global panic and looting and all of that. I think they probably pulled it off. The notion then of people like Micheál Martin or the economy of Ireland or the economy of Texas being collateral and all that, they don't care. They don't care. They're not altruistic. They don't care. All right? They don't care. We are still seeing, even on the alti scene here in Ireland, people who are relying on the mainstream media and the politician. Guys, get out of it, please. Get out of it, please. Oh, Micheál said this or Leo said that. You know, and they're deploring the fact that Varadkar's a liar and a crook. Oh, you know, Varadkar is a liar and a crook. I said it 3 years ago. You know, I wouldn't say that Micheál Martin is necessarily as depraved as Varadkar is. But there are two things. There is the reason why the mainstream media has refused to ask any awkward questions whatsoever of Varadkar. Now, Varadkar is far too stupid and primitive to keep his head down. So Varadkar is a narcissist who needs to get on radio and get on TV and needs to be seen. That's because Varadkar, even though he is extremely limited, knows in his heart that there's nothing there. So for his own validation, he needs to be seen in newspapers, heard on the radio, seen on TV. That's a personal thing with Varadkar. He needs to do that to keep himself, to keep the narrative going in his head, the little loop in his head. No, you are not a useless loser. No, you're not. Look, you are on radio Timoleague talking about 100 new jobs in some kind of an asbestos factory in a field. You know, that's Varadkar does it to assuage his own awareness of his own inadequacy. I know what psychopaths are like. I've taught in schools in which principals are psychopaths. I'm remembering one individual who was a foul psychopath. And he was saying things. I realise in retrospect, I didn't at that stage in my 20s know what psychopaths were all about. Now I do. He was playing a dialogue in his own head to say, no, you are not a useless, incompetent waste of space. No. And Varadkar's doing the same thing. Varadkar knows that he is a useless, incompetent loser. He can't even keep his hair straight, which is a serious red flag for me, and I'm not joking. Martin is somewhat similar, but just not quite as backward as Varadkar. You know, but there is the failure of the Irish mainstream media to ask Varadkar any awkward questions, particularly about his criminality and his corruption in public decisions, which he is too stupid to keep his head down about. That is beginning, not necessarily going to happen, but it is beginning to morph into a news item in its own right. Yeah, so it should. But there's a separate matter there. There's the groupthink of Montrose. Oh, yeah, Leo's a ledge. Oh, yeah. You know, he wore socks and, did you see the socks? Oh, God, such a ledge. Then he went to Downing Street and he said, oh, love, actually. Despite the fact that it was terribly embarrassing and it's not the decorous way one would expect a national leader to behave. No, Leo's at a Downing. Then the White House. Yeah, he said taking the piss when he was addressing Trump or Pence at the White House. Everything about the man's behaviour is juvenile and inadequate. So there is this second tier of absolute losers hanging around the outer edges of Club Montrose, who think that if they ingratiate themselves to Varadkar, that they'll get the NGO post as a publicity officer. They may have 10 years ago, yes, absolutely, but Texas has changed everything, and that has an implication and a blowout for all the rest of us, what's happening in Texas. Because Texas proves that all of these people are liars. That we were sold a pup. Well, I didn't. I never bought into the green thing. But that mainstream, the normies, the cheese brains, oh yeah, we've got to have turbines, oh yeah, wind turbines. Yeah, you were sold a pup. You were had by Al Gore and Greta Thunberg's. I won't say what I think of Greta Thunberg's parents, let alone Greta Thunberg. There was something tripping on my lips there, particularly about her mother. No. You were sold a pup. You were sold a pile of rubbish in relation to the green agenda here. Get over it. Forgive yourselves. You know? Okay, you may feel humiliated now. But when the mainstream politicians saw what was coming with the lockdown, and as I've said before, that's coming from a different thing altogether. They will never tell you what's really happening. You know, there's a principle. If somebody in the mainstream, a politician or one of those mainstream media heads is holding up their right hand, then you need to go and look at where their left hand is. That's a very important rule. So whatever the mainstream media is telling you, whatever the politicians are telling you, look at what the other story is. Look away. I'll tell you that from the High Court. If you follow what's going on in the High Court, that's where you'll follow things much more accurately. You have to read the rulings, you have to read the legalese. It's all written in, all the stuff in the High Court is written in quite obtuse legalese. Legalese is a technical language, you know, you can learn it. You can learn legalese. There's a lot of code in legalese, and there's a lot of code in what goes on in court. That's the way it is. That's the way it is. But, you know, they should have seen, anybody with sense should have seen what was coming with the lockdown. And to an extent, maybe I did, because at February 2020, as I said, after the general election in Ireland, I said, okay, great, I'm never going to run for elected office, be it a committee, be it the Dáil, the Seanad, the presidency, anything. I'm never going to put my name forward for any of those. I'm not going to put my name for a vote, be it a board of management of a school, be it a union rep. I'm never ever going to put my name forward for any kind of vote of any kind of type for the rest of my life. Maybe it was a Jungian thing, and maybe I realised that it was time that whatever about Micheál Martin, or Leo Varadkar, or Joe Biden, or Simon Harris, or Kamala Harris, or Greta Thunberg, or any of them becoming collateral, I was going to make damn sure that I wasn't. As an addendum, I've just added this in at the end of the recording, there is something poker players say. If you're ever playing a game of poker, the first thing that you have to look out for is who the sucker of the game is. After about 20 minutes, you should be able to determine who the sucker of the game is. If you haven't determined after 20 minutes who the sucker of the game is, then the answer is clear. That means the sucker of the game is you.